All right, welcome back to our class. So correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the fourth lecture we've had? I think four, right? Today is the fourth. And so far, we've heard from really some very different perspectives. One of them, we basically started out with a venture capitalist perspective. We've had an entrepreneur who bootstrapped a company and really talked kind of from a business point of view about bootstrapping a company and going from that zero to IPO type of thing. Last week was a research scientist perspective, kind of a futurist perspective. Today, we're going to have a blend of a technologist, an artist, and a serial entrepreneur. And that's Steve Beck, who goes by the title of Electronics Research and Development Specialist. And he's also a visiting industrial fellow here at UC Berkeley since 2005. Steve has developed over 500 electronic products in his career, one of which was an energy management savings system for Safeway, and it saved Safeway $60 million a year in its deployment. His interests are in video imaging, video synthesis. He's also interested in electronic toys and games, or I should say he's been involved in development of electronic toys and games. He's worked with Mattel, Hasbro, and others in this category. And in general, from the broadest point of view, his interest is in the fusion of art and technology. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Steve Beck.
Thank you, Clark. Good evening, everyone. All 42 of us in the room that I counted. Thank you very much for your kind introduction, and it's an honor to be here, invited to lecture tonight at the greatest university in the world, UC Berkeley. Go Bears. I, too, was a student here back in 1960 and got tear gassed. I know I don't look old enough to have developed over 500 commercial electronic products, but it's really true. And so in the brief time we have here this evening, I have several video and slideshows to share with you some of my stories about my work and how I succeeded more than I failed. And many opportunities have come my way, and having a degree in electronic engineering from a world-class university like Berkeley has certainly been beneficial in getting my foot in the door. But as always, it takes a lot of hard work to follow up on an idea and see it all the way through to success in the marketplace. Entropy of the marketplace is working against you. Everything wants to reduce your ideas to chaos, block you from getting them there. So you have to kind of learn how to never give up. That's one of my favorite quotes. So by way of introduction, I'd like to show you a brief 5-minute video. I was once on the CBS Morning News, and I'll talk a little bit about how you can use marketing and promotion to benefit your success. And then I'll lead you through about a 20-minute slideshow excerpting some of my inventions and talk about how they came about. And I guess one of the things Iklog asked me is, what excites me and inspires me every day when I wake up? Because I've been doing this now for over 40 years. In fact, I had a slide there. It's up to about 15,000 days of inventing and creating. So I guess when I wake up, I realize there are just all kinds of problems to be solved by the application of engineering skills in the world. And that's real opportunity if you can find one of those and focus on it and maybe get together a team of collaborators and stay focused on your mission, that you can help solve some of those problems. Challenges definitely appear every moment along the way, but you never give up. You just remain confident that you and your team can solve them and succeed. Thomas Edison, a famous American inventor, once said that invention is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Hopefully you can improve on that ratio, because I sure don't want to be perspiring that much. But he was an experimental inventor, and he sweat a lot more than might be necessary if he'd been a little more theoretical or maybe just gotten a little bit luckier. Definitely luck and timing play a part, and I'll show you one of my favorite quotes from Louis Pasteur, which is, "Chance favors the prepared mind." In other words, there'll be a lucky chance, a lucky moment, an opportunity you will get, but you better be prepared to move That's why you have to go and get your degree and get your theoretical and fundamental knowledge in hand so that it's just second nature to you, like breathing, kind of subconsciously autonomic, so that you can recognize opportunities out there. And also, who you know is almost as important as what you know. So you definitely want to be networking, making friends, teaming up with people so that you can find a cohesive team. It's almost impossible for the lone inventor, the single person, to get very far these days with massive organizations. And you know, I've known inventors who had patents and wasted 30 years of their life in litigation over a patent, and it just ate away at them. And you know, at the end of the day, they might have won a settlement, but then the lawyers took most of the money. And I say, look, a patent, and everyone's probably read the articles of how complicated and flawed the patent system is. I mean, they're just issuing patents like script. It's your ability later to defend a patent in litigation, and that's a whole other ballgame. So let me see if I can stop this and start this little video. And it runs for about 6 minutes, and it'll just give you a little bit of overview of a few of these 500 things.
Are electronically monitored. Their lights and temperatures electronically controlled. And if something goes wrong, the system will wake up somebody at home to tell him. The system, which saved up to $6 million in energy costs
This is describing this energy management system that I was the chief architect and designer. Yeah, younger, thinner.
A whole array of products that Stephen has had a hand in.
This was started in 1978, and by 1980, after 1 year of tests, Safeway stores committed to outfit every one of their 6,000 stores worldwide with that system.
Myself, as well as the people at Margo Controls, who designed
Margo Controls was a Hambert and Quest startup in Silicon Valley. Had no R&D, so they came to me and my group in Berkeley at Beck Tech 1, which was my first company that I founded in 1978. And we designed and engineered the whole system. Margo installed it, and maintained, and serviced it, which was a huge job.
They called you the Picasso of the video screen. Indeed, we're going to see some of the things
I don't know about Picasso, but
can
you hear the audio okay?
Video game. You've made about 8 of them. This was the latest.
Yes, Bill. Well, my company, Beck Tech, out in Berkeley, California, we think of ourselves as an electronic creativity center. And we like to take the non-obvious type of thing like breakdancing and put it on a home computer. This is a new game that will be published by Epix this fall. And we've created this breakdancing. This is one of 4 parts of the game. We have over 400 animated dancing patterns in this game, which is more than any other game we know of. And you can feel...
Obviously, by today's video game standards, this looks very primitive. But at the time, nobody had ever done this. And we'd actually gone down to Oakland and paid kids who were breakdancing so we could film them. And then we rotoscoped their moves into animation. And when this came out in 1984 or 1985, whenever it came out, it was very successful. It sold about 200,000 copies on Commodore 64. I did video games in the first generation, and people keep asking me if I'm going to go back to video games. I don't know, I might. It's obviously a huge industry.
It's a puzzle. Some competition, some intelligent, some creative.
A lot of interest in that?
I'm told from Epix the advance orders are running very strong, and it will be on the market as of October 1st.
We're all interested in video games, but let's get to your real forte. Stephen Beck, illuminated music. You're using it now as a canvas that an artist paints on. Take us into this new world of, I would call it experimental television. You've done that before.
Well, I've been experimenting for 15 years with video art, with my video synthesizer, which you see here. And this is my album coming out on the home market, Illuminated Music. This part of the album is the music of Yusef Lateef. And
so when I published this album, when home video was just starting to take off in 1984, everybody had VHS videotape machines. And we set a goal. We wanted to sell 10,000 copies of this album, and we did. It took us about 18 months, and we got into bookstores, art museum bookstores. And one of my art world heroes is Albrecht Durer, a 15th century German woodcutting artist who popularized mass editions. Instead of just the princes and the barons being able to afford fine art, he made it possible for his ordinary fellow German countrymen to acquire pieces because he could mass produce the pieces. So I always liked that idea of a mass edition, and we were very successful with this publication. I've always been interested in the boundary between art and technology, and also in monetizing the art. If you're lucky as a living artist, you can monetize your artwork. Most artists, you know, famous names like you've heard of Van Gogh, you know, he was dead and gone, and his brother Theo wound up making the fortune from Van Gogh's paintings. And now, of course, a Van Gogh sunflower sits in Tokyo that's said to be worth $100 million. And is also said to maybe not be an original, maybe a copy.
This work deals with the process of unification at material.
In my early days, I was having success as this video artist, and I got grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and the American Film Institute. And then I ran out. After 4 years, I was a starving artist. And it turned out, a year later, I met a senior executive from National Semiconductor, one of the first Silicon Valley companies down there in the pear orchards. And that digital pattern you saw, what I call video weaving, they got real interested in that because they were trying to develop video integrated circuits for use in television sets, broadcasting, and also in video games. So I did my first licensing deal where I licensed to National Semiconductor the rights to use that circuit and work with them to develop it into other applications. And that's how I got started learning about licensing.
Really takes us into the 21st century. Why don't you give me one?
Well, Bill?
This is called the phosphotron.
Right.
And why don't you explain it as we
Well,
both
everyone
put
has
this
probably seen a phosphene when you lightly press on your eyes or close and squeeze your eyes. And my invention, the phosphotron, is simply my next step in, as an artist, wanting to put an image into your head. With this headset on, we can produce and pass very weak electrical currents into your eyes. It's quite safe. And produce various types of images, spots of light, patterns, textures. We can plug a musical source like a Walkman.
This is a depiction of phosphenes. I mean, how many people have ever seen phosphenes? You know, if you close your eyes and you kind of rub them and you see little colors and things. Well, I'm fascinated by those. Where do they come from? What do they mean? And one of the ideas of this invention is that it perhaps would have some possible application for visually impaired persons. There's certainly been some amazing research of going in, implanting electrodes surgically into the visual cortex. You saw last week a model concept that Dr. Jacobs showed. I think it came from Denmark or Germany, and you know, it was 20,000 euros or something. And you know, but you get into surgical implantations, and my idea was there a way to reach that without a subcutaneous operation, and I think that's all we want to see of that. So let's kill that and go back to the slideshow. I had to run a great luck in Japan during the mid to end phase of the bubble economy, and I got invited over like 15 times as a guest lecturer, as an artist, and I had an investment group in Tokyo that wanted to invest in development of this phosphotron all the way. It was looking for like $5 million. Well, their real estate deals blew up and the money disappeared, so the deal never closed. But, you know, you don't let that stop you. You don't let that slow you down. You move on and you continue. And I have patents on that technology, and I'm intending to do another generation of it digitally. But when I started my first company back in 1978, Beck Tech 1, it was started with just $2,000 of investment capital, half from me and half from a friend of mine, who later, when I sold the company, made over a 65x return on his investment. And he said to me then, "Why didn't you take more money from me?" I said, "Well, I didn't need it." I had customers. I had bootstrapped my company with revenues that I was earning as an application engineer of microprocessors, where Intel, Texas Instruments, National Semiconductor were more than happy to send customers my way because they didn't want to deal with what you did with these chips. They just wanted to sell the chips. So my first company, I was able to bootstrap up and didn't have to go out searching for funds. Like I said, I made the transition from starving artists to licensing circuits to Silicon Valley when you used to go down there and it was still mostly pear orchards. In fact, when you used to go to Siliconics to get MOS transistors, they sent you home with like 20 pounds of pears because they owned 20 acres of pear orchards and only had 1 acre for the fab. I then started this first company, and I grew it to the point where I had 40 employees, many of whom I recruited by just coming over here to Corey Hall and writing a sign, you know, electronic engineering students wanted for a cool job. We had offices in the Claremont Hotel, which was cool. And by the time I sold that company in 1989, we had done this energy management system for Safeway, which I still feel is one of the most socially redeeming projects that I've ever done. In fact, during the blackouts of 2000, I was getting phone calls from everybody, whatever happened to that energy thing you did? I said, well, go raise $50 million in venture capital funding, and we can try and do it again. Of course, as we learned later, that was a total Enronization, market manipulation. But not to de-emphasize the importance in energy conservation and energy savings. One of the big research projects here over at College of Engineering is the DR, demand response, just to get people to use less electrical power when demand is peaking so we don't have to build more generators. I then started another company, Lapis Technologies, with a partner. I didn't know anything about business, had never taken a business class, but during the Beck Tech run, I had to learn everything from how to do balance sheets, read profit and loss. I learned, like I say, the equivalent of a Stanford MBA by experience. So this time I took in a partner who was a CPA. We decided we needed to raise $500,000, which still took us almost 2 years to raise, and this was in 1989. And what we did in this company is we made video display products for Macintosh, Apple Macintosh computers, including PC to TV converters. Again, my friends always say, Beck, you're always 10 years ahead of the time. Ever since even the Apple II days, I was interested in getting a picture from a PC personal computer onto a TV. And in fact, what saved Lapis was we got a deal from Apple. They wanted to buy 10,000 of our little Apple, it was the Macintosh LTV for educational markets. And we made enough revenue from that that the company became very attractive, and we sold it for $5 million to Focus Enhancements, a NASDAQ publicly traded company who went from there. Then I was pretty much running just consulting projects. And then in 2000, I took up a gig with 4Kids Entertainment, a New York-based children's entertainment company, most famous for having managed the Pokemon licensing, from which their 2% generated from all the Pokemon money gave them a record revenue in 1999 of $150 million. It turns out the guy that runs the company was an old buddy of mine from the toy business, and he wanted to do technology products for kids. So I ran his R&D group, which he wanted to set up in New York, but I convinced him to let it stay in Berkeley and California, since there's not much R&D talent of this nature available in New York. And I'll talk a little bit about a couple of the products that came out of that, like the GBA TV and Mattel Juice Box. Products that were successful at first, but then failed due to executive battles and warfare, which is one of the pitfalls of when you do license inventions. You lose a lot of control of things that can go wrong. Bad marketing, bad planning, corruption, executive battles. So there's a flip side to the formula and method that I'd used. Let's see if this moves ahead. Okay, yeah, I always like to toss out a few of my favorite quotes, or quotes that have inspired me. I already mentioned the Louis Pasteur, chance favors the prepared mind. So you really have to have your mind prepared. How many here are engineering students? Yeah, most are engineering. What are the other students? Business? Management of technology? Okay. Imagination, the ability to visualize. Imagine in your mind, Einstein, did he say imagination is as important as knowledge? Or did he say imagination is more important than knowledge? I'm still trying to track down the original quote in German, since Einstein spoke German, to figure that out. But I like that play. I like the Dalai Lama. He says, when you lose, don't lose the lesson. So, you know, sometimes you're going to lose, but you still have a lesson that you can take away from that loss and not make the same mistake again. I guess from my artistic standpoint, I like this quote from Confucius. Everything has its beauty, but not everyone sees it. But this ties into something I'm going to talk about in a few minutes called EE, entertainment engineering. How many of you followed the reports from the TED conference last weekend down in Monterey? Anybody know what the TED conference is? TED? Technology, Entertainment, and Design. $6,000 if you want to go. That's what they charge you. Or they invite you, and they had Bill Clinton there, and they awarded him the top prize. And they had all kinds of really interesting people talking about their vision of the future. But I'm very interested in entertainment in a general sense. In the Webster sense, the definition of entertainment means to engage the mind. It's not, you know, entertainment like tap dancing and clowns and stuff like that, though that's part of entertainment. But obviously, entertainment is huge. And if you look at today's headlines, both in the New York Times and our friendly local comical, you know, here's this $1 billion lawsuit that Viacom's throwing on Google about, you know, pirating their copyrighted content, not just once, twice, but 150,000 times. And so there's big, big dollars at stake at entertainment. I mean, you know that the video game industry, which is primarily entertainment, is in excess of $20 billion annually. You know that movie gross box office grosses are something like 8 to 10 billion, and you add DVDs on there. I'm very interested in this whole space of entertainment and in engineering entertainment with the same kind of disciplines and processes that you would use engineering a machine or a circuit or a piece of software. Definitely in terms of, I know you're all thinking about your future, what's your career going to be, how are you going to make a living, what are you going to do? Love what you do and do what you love. Somebody named Wayne Dyer said, attributed to that, but that's, I've always done what I love. When I get up in the morning, I go, all right, I got a big project to solve today, and I'm going to love doing it, even though it's going to be a pain in the butt, and I don't know how I'm going to do it. A lot of times we'd take on projects and tell the client, oh yeah, sure, we can do that. We didn't know how we were going to do it at the time we said that, but we knew that we would figure out how to do it. It's like these stories you hear about from cowboy movie stars in the 50s, and the guy would say, well, they asked me if I knew how to ride a horse, and I said, of course, and I'd never ridden a horse before, but he got the job, and that's how you balance your confidence and your discipline to succeed, and imagine something that wasn't there. And then, of course, never give up. You'll hear me say that a lot. Here's a couple books I would recommend for reference reading, because I'm very interested in failure as well as success. And this Great Failures of the Extremely Successful, I'm sure if you just go Amazon that title, you'll find it. He's got about 150 stories that he's put together of people from sports, entertainment, business, many of names you've never heard of. Some you have, like Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Atari, who had a great success with Atari. Then he went and started some Chuck E. Cheese, which went chapter 11. I mean, it's a roller coaster ride, but you'll learn how the successes were followed by failures, and then successes or failures, success, failure. I always say, look, just make sure your failures are not fatal. In other words, you don't kill anybody, aren't horrendously expensive, and that you never do them again. So in other words, you're entitled to make one mistake, but don't repeat it. In terms of engineering, since this is, I think, an engineering college of engineering, this author, Henry Petrosky, this is a fascinating study of the role of failure in successful design. And of course, you know, when I started out as an engineering undergraduate, it was back at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, where Iklak and I share a common alumnus there. And the first course I took, which was Engineering 101, which was your introduction to engineering, they showed you this film footage of that bridge. How many have seen that? Yeah, well, okay, then you know it. At Illinois, okay, yeah. I mean, that's something that they should show every engineering student. Fortunately, nobody was killed in that. And it's amazing footage to watch this huge structure start to resonate and oscillate, and you're going, oh my goodness, you know, who did the calculations on that? But Mr. Petrosky, this is a very interesting case study, again, of failures and successes, because I always think a lot of what engineering is, as well as running companies, is minimizing the failures and disasters and maximizing the successes. If you take a baseball player, even a decently considered really good baseball player, they're only hitting 1 out of 3 times, and that's considered good in baseball. Now in business, in a company, that may not be enough. You may have to hit 8 or 9 out of 10 to make it financially viable. Oops, that's a duplicated slide. Let's skip that one. Well, since I'm so coupled with video, I'm very interested in the origin of words and etymology. And it turns out the word video and idea in English both derive from the same Latin root word, videre, to see. And when I teach or work and bring people in to work with me, I'm very specific about seeing, not just looking. In other words, most people just look at something and they don't really see it. Being observant, debugging a software program, finding out in the spreadsheets of your company financing there's formula areas. It really takes, it's something you've looked at 10 times, the 11th time you look at it, you see, oh, I missed that. Try to get that to be the first time. And of course, one of my big heroes, Leonardo da Vinci, to see is to know. His whole philosophy was based on knowledge by visual language. So that being said, let's skip ahead here. I'll skip the personal history other than to say I've been watching TV on and off since 1952 when I saw my first test pattern. However, with children, we were not allowed to watch TV. We got to watch one show a week. And I'm not going to make a judgment about watching too much TV or not, but I was around when color came in and the old Peacock. Now, with high-def TV, I saw a study last week that said 70% of the people who own high-def TVs don't even know if they're watching high-def or not. It's too subtle to notice. But when color came in, you definitely could see color. Fiat Lux, the motto of our beloved university. It means, let there be light. So I'm very interested in light. Luminous emitted light, the inner light that you see within the mind's eye, which is where I get all my ideas and inventions, not just the technical ones, but also business concepts. Gee, would this be a good idea for a company? Could I sell this? Would somebody want to buy this? I'm very much interested in emitted light, and my current passion is with light-emitting diodes, LEDs, because they're showing up all over the place. And if there's time at the end, I'll show you my newest light-emitting diode video light sculpture that we did have here on campus last month at the Bears research event with respect to our Noor project, the time-variant animation of Middle Eastern Islamic geometric patterns. And I've got a poster of that project up over there. Yeah, I came out of Chicago in the Midwest in the 60s and got tear gassed in Chicago before I came to Berkeley and got tear gassed here. But the key thing I was going on, experiments in art and technology, Billy Kluver did this failed robotic performance at the Museum of Modern Art in 1966. And I heard about it. I said, this is so cool. Because what I wanted to do was to make something beautiful with television. And it turns out that was a good idea because it's led me to a certain amount of fame and a certain amount of fortune. But I just did it because I wanted to do it. I wanted to counter the negative effects of destructive technology with something, and I chose television because it was so ubiquitous. So I teamed up in Chicago with a group of other artists, and we formed the first chapter of the EAT movement. And the first piece that I worked on was this neon tombstone. And this was about a 10-foot by 10-foot plot of dirt that we put in the gallery, and 24 pieces of neon around a real marble tombstone, and an electromechanical computer that I designed and built using transistor logic and stepping relays. And then this was exhibited at this was sold in a gallery in New York, and some collector bought it. And then I heard where it is supposedly Steve Wynn, the Las Vegas mogul, has acquired it, and he's planning to use it in his own tombstone someday in Las Vegas. And I'm going, well, that makes a lot of sense. However, one problem with an artist is when you create a work and sell it at point A for X dollars, and that gallery, collector, whatever, sells it to point B for 10X dollars, you don't get any of that 10X. Now, Europe has a law that requires artists to share in a percentage of appreciating revenues, but having a law collecting the money are two different things. So this phosphatron and virtual light, as I called the technology, started out from this idea of using the eyeball itself as a screen or a canvas. And again, the root words, Greek phosphos, light, phenos, to see, allows us to conceive of something called a phosphatron, which electronically induced the phosphenes. And it's very hard to articulate what they really look like, though there has been scientific research on their nature. And I've done experimental tests with sight and visually impaired people and have some interesting results. But this is a very difficult field to productize because you're dealing with electrical signals in contact with sensitive organs, FDA regulations. That's why I went to Japan to see if I could develop this into a business because there are just fewer regulations there. I obtained a couple of patents on this analog technology. gave presentations. I was honored when William Gibson, the author who coined the term cyberspace, named a whole novel after my invention, and he kindly credits me there. And now I've got sort of the digital version of this for the 21st century, and hoping that there'll be some opportunity to develop it. We got to move along here because we got to get to questions. Let's skip all this and get to the electronic toys and games, because one of the aspects of licensing my video synthesizer digital circuitry to National Semiconductor was I got in on the early stages of the video game industry. And that in turn got me in on the early stages of the electronic game and electronic toy industry. I don't know if any of you saw those LED handheld electronic football games that came out in the late 1970s. I have a few. I've seen them going on eBay for thousands of dollars. But oh wait, I don't want to skip over video weavings here real quick, because this was so fundamentally basic to a lot of my success between the licensing. But the idea was to tie in the scanning of a video image with the metaphor of weaving fiber into textiles. And so I was also fascinated by the numerological and numerical analysis found in magic squares. How many of you have ever done a magic square where the numbers add up? Yep. Kind of like, a little bit like Sudoku, but not exactly. So I had the idea that I could turn these numerical sequences into colors. And here's some pages from my notebooks where, you know, how many of you keep notebooks and diaries? That's all? Do you remember everything you think of? If you leave tonight with one single piece of advice, it's get yourself a notebook. I mean, I've got file cabinets and notebooks going back 35, 40 years. I'm always scribbling down ideas. Like when I wake up, I've got one by my bed. If I wake up in the middle of the night with an idea, I scribble it down, hope I can read it. Another piece of advice I had was have some other activity that you spend at least half an hour a day doing that's got nothing to do with mental engineering or business. Like I swim a mile every day. It takes me about half an hour. And I get a lot of problem solved while I'm swimming. And as soon as I get out, I got my waterproof notepad there. Or get yourself, if you get the audio thing, yeah, you still got to transcribe it. To me, there's something about doing this that for me links the idea in my brain. But notebooks also, as your inventor, you got to have proof. When you started something, you date it, you get a friend to witness it, or get it notarized, anything to establish that you had the idea first. So out of this, I wire wrapped this whole video weaver circuitry together. And then here, just real quick, a few seconds of the animations, because what's happening now is even though I did this work before there was really digital computer animation graphics like we know of it now, it was seen by some executives in Tokyo when it was exhibited at the Tokyo Museum of Contemporary Art, executives from Mitsubishi, who, guess what, had just invented the first giant plasma gas video screen that they sold the first one in the United States to the New York Mets at Shea Stadium. And the executive saw my weavings and he saw the diamond and he thought Diamond Vision. So they bought a license from me to run the video weavings at every New York Mets game in 1982. And they paid me $100 a game. I think I made about $3,000 or $5,000 that year, which was a lot of money for having your work license. Unfortunately, the Mets lost that season, so they didn't renew the license. They thought it was jinxed. But now, I'm got a new process where I print the frames from this digital video onto canvas. It's like painting. I'm actually like getting them painted on there using chromatic dyes. And here's a piece hanging in our home. This piece was just acquired by the Museum of Contemporary Art San Diego for well into the 5-figure range. And other collectors are acquiring these pieces. And every frame is different, so I can sell an individual, non-repeating piece to as many clients as I can. And they're lined up now. Let's skip ahead to the electronic toys and games so we have room for questions here at the end. Yeah, it was no fun being a starving artist. And in fact, I've pointed out that after my company started to take off, I repaid the federal United States government many, many times over for the grants they gave me when I was getting started through the National Endowment for the Arts and the American Film Institute. I also received grants from the Rockefeller Foundation. They didn't need to be paid back. And so there was a lot of controversy about the government funding of artist grants. And I wrote them and I said, hey, look how much I paid you back. I was like a 10x ROI for you, so maybe you should take a chance. So one of my other passions, in addition to making something beautiful with technology, is to make something fun with the technology. And that's brought me into a world of electronic toys and games, of which a few of which you see here. Now, I was certainly, again, inspired by Edison's talking doll, which he invented in 1887, based on his phonograph. And there was an exhibition at the San Francisco airport in the United Terminal. I don't know if it's still up, but they have one of the dolls. It's a whole exhibition of sound and audio. And I went out to New Jersey to see the Edison labs, but you'll see that his mechanism, of course, was mechanical. In fact, it was a disc. Everyone knows Edison invented a cylinder audio reproduction apparatus, but the first time he used a disc was in this doll. And it had a spring wind-up mechanism, and the idea was you cranked it up. Well, my version is called Talking Wrinkles, and it was the first interactive artificial intelligent affection toy. And he's based on powered by batteries. And this was an article that appeared in the New York Times in 1986, I think, when Wrinkles came out, which got me in a lot of trouble with Coleco, who manufactured them. The CEO called me up and said, "What are you doing giving all our trade secrets away?" I said, "Cy, come on, this isn't rocket science." 500,000 were sold. It was green-lighted March 1st. It was shipping August 30th from China, where it was assembled. That's characterized as, in the last 10 or 15 or 20 years, every product I've done, you just can't believe how tight and short the production cycle is. Nobody wants to commit. Nobody wants to say go and commit money until the absolute last possible second. So real quick, here, let me see if Wrinkles is going to come.
Please, hug me.
He wants a hug. You hug him, he laughs. If you feed him his bone, he's a puppet. He's not animatronic. I'm not a big fan of animatronic toys. I'd like to see toys powered by kids. He likes to kiss. He says over 4,000 grammatically correct sentences. He'll sing. That was the last minute. We figured out we could just vary the timing on the interrupt drive of his speech and change the pitch. He's got all kinds of interactive sensors. The same year he came out, Coleco had Cabbage Patch Kids, which sold 5 million. So poor old Wrinkles got the hook because he didn't sell 5 million. He only sold 500,000, which for a first-year season introduction, that's a decent number for toys. But again, like I say, you don't wallow in things. You just move on to the next thing. Let me know if it's time to stop and ask for questions here. Let me jump ahead real quick. This just came out last year, and I still get calls from friends in the industry who know me. This is the books of 250 North American bird sounds. Let's see. It's a book with a built-in audio player. 250 bird sounds obtained from the license from the Cornell Department of Ornithology, where they have thousands of songs recorded in the wild by mostly amateurs. They're full of noise. Signal-to-noise ratio is terrible. 400 megabytes of wave files. In order to make the price point, we had to squeeze them down to 2 megabytes of data to run in a 50-cent sound DSP chip. So I had to figure out how to compress 400 megabytes by a factor of 200 to 1 and still get them to sound good. And when Cornell got the final alpha prototype to approve, they called and said, "This is the best we've ever heard. We don't understand how you did it." Well, that's a whole other series of lectures. I could talk about how we did it. The other two toys I brought, and you're welcome to come up and look at these later, these were 4Kids technology developments. Okay, here's a quick story. I bring to the CEO a concept, which is to put video on an audio CD. One of the premises is in toys that kids want to have like grown-ups have, but can't afford it. And a portable DVD player was selling for like $300. And I knew we could do it. He said, no, we don't do that. Turns out one of his clients was Nintendo, He said, make it so you can play it on a Nintendo Game Boy. So we got the specs. We found out it's got 32 megabytes of ROM max. It's a 16 megahertz ARM7. Nobody's played video and audio on such a low MIPS platform. Oh, you got your iPods and your MP3 players and your PCs. You've got, 5 gigabyte of RAM, 1 gigahertz. We did it. We being a team. I put a team together, 2 software engineers here, production studio in New York, manufacturing in Hong Kong for this descendant product of the Mattel Juice Box. And this should have been and could have been the iPod for kids. Again, played cartoons from solid-state read-only memory. We went to Matrix Semiconductor, which was co-founded by one of the distinguished professors here, Vivek Subramaniam. They were barely hanging on, even though Nintendo had invested $10 million in it. We brought them the Mattel deal, and it gave them enough cash flow to stay alive till SanDisk acquired them. Then the product was killed because one executive got into a battle with another executive, and then it was also found out that some of the marketing people were taking money on the side. In fact, they told me, I didn't see this, but I heard from people at Mattel that one day the police came in and they actually took one of the executives out in handcuffs. He was being arrested for illegal activities. And so our great little product in vector quantized compression technology that nobody had ever thought could be done, just like that. And who went out with a product with video on an audio CD? Hasbro with Video Now. They sold $50 million of it the first year. So you get in these situations where you know it's right, but the person running the money, the person controlling the decisions wants you to go another way. You have a choice. You say, screw it, I'm out of here. Or you say, OK, I'll play the game the way you want to write the rules and see what we can do. How are we doing on time? Is it time to ask a few questions? I'm going to skip through all this Japan work, commissions from His Imperial Highness Prince Tomohito of Masaka for interactive video sculptures. Let's take some questions, and then if there's some few minutes left at the end, I'll show you a little bit of this new Noor project for which we were honored with a gift from the Al-Falah Fund last year. So like I say, as an entrepreneur and an artist, it's been a great ride. There. I think future forecasts, we heard last week that services are big, but products still are important. Somebody's got to design the product. And I think in products that customized and quality will rule. I just saw an ad in a paper the other day for M&Ms. You can now go online and order customized M&Ms. Let's say, you saw that. Oh, that's a great idea. I bet you they're going to sell tons of M&Ms. Companies can still be formed. Everyone should try at least a startup. Here's a provocative statement, a question. Is the dollar going to be the new peso? And if so, what does that mean to you in your future, in your career, and the global economy? How many have read The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman? Recommended reading. It's very biased and slanted. He didn't talk to any academic educators, but it will give you some idea of what's going on out there because you're not just competing with your neighbors, you're competing with people all around the world. And I'm just going to end with one more statement. When I was a student here, you were given the clear message, first of all, there was a real firewall between the university and private industry. That's gone now. It has to be in order to survive. The other was there were firewalls between students. You were supposed to do all your homework on your own, do all your projects on your own. Maybe you had a lab partner. I think now the collaborative model where students collaborate is a very viable model because moving forward and competing at a global situation and a global marketplace, you've got to have teamwork and you've got to have collaboration. In addition to your engineering, technical, and business studies, branch out into some other fields. Take humanities classes, life science, economics, art, community service, study another language. It really helps your mind to balance off your main focus of study with something else, just so there's some different energies in your brain neurons. Keep notebooks active at all times. So, all right, questions, comments? What can I... Yes, in the back. The question is the phosphatron, can the phosphatron be used to generate actual images? I used to describe that we were at the dot and dash stage. We couldn't paint a picture of a house and a hill and trees, but I did have a seance set up where I'd bring 12 people in and wire everybody up together, and everybody saw the similar images where it went from fields of color shifting to microtextures. And I had a high level of confidence that if we could develop the phosphotronic technology several orders of magnitude further, that we could actually display alphanumeric characters, for example. I did one test with a gentleman who was about 60 years of age who'd had an industrial accident and his retina was detached and he couldn't really see. But with the phosphotron, he could see all the phosphotronic patterns. He could talk about it because he once did see and had a vocabulary for vision. I had two other volunteers come in who I met through my friend Professor Forrest Moser up at the Space Science Lab. He had a PhD student who was the only blind PhD astrophysicist in the world. And this fellow had been blind since birth. So he came in and he was a very big man. He was taller than me and big. And he was on there and he wanted me to turn the amplitude of the voltage up higher and higher. And I said, all right, I'm going to disconnect because you're getting into levels where can't guarantee safety. And he wanted to see or sense something. And in our dialogue, and I have this on audio tape, we realized he had no way of describing what he saw since he never saw anything. He did say, he said, you know, I'm feeling heat, and the heat's moving like this. And he said, if people take me outside and point me to the sun, I feel heat. He said, that's the closest word I can give you for, quote, seeing light. So here's a project started over 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I feel there's a to-be-continued stage, and I do believe that it would be possible by induction into the optic nerve without subcutaneous electrode implantation to form images. But I think we'd go from dot and dash to voice to black and white TV, monochrome, then to color. It'd sort of be a long road to get there. Other comments, questions? Yes? Question is, as an inventor and engineer, how hard is it to keep up with technologies as they change? Constant. I read probably 10 to 15 hours a week minimum of trade publications, IEEE proceedings, internet. I mean, everything I've showed you, when I graduated with my BSc ECS at Berkeley, it turns out I was in the first course where they did ECS. None of it existed. No microprocessors, no RAM. I'm constantly having to learn the new technology. I've been getting this one. This is not an academic publication, but EE Times. I've been getting it since it started coming out in 1974. Here's today's article. Where are the programmers? Enrollment wanes just as computer scientists grapple with problems of parallelism. So, sorry to tell you, but once you graduate, you're just beginning, and you're going to constantly be reading, going to seminars, going to conferences. As an engineer, technologist, or inventor, what you knew 5 years ago is practically obsolete, and you're just going to have to constantly re-educate yourself and commit the time to staying abreast of your field. But that's fun, learning new things. I took MOS semiconductor from Professor Dave Hodges here in 1970, and he said 10 microns is probably the smallest line width we'll ever be able to achieve. Of course, now they're talking about 10 nanometers. And I say, hey, Dave, remember, I was kidding. Hey, Dave, remember when you told us 10 microns would be the limit? He said, oh, I was just kidding. I said, I know you were. Other question? Was there another hand over there? Got time for one more? Are we coming to the end of the show here? Yes? Okay, it's a good question. How do I, what interests me at what point, and then, whether it's an interest of some concept or economic interest. I don't know. It's partly luck, partly judgment. It's partly opportunity. I mean, people are calling me now going, we want to, whatever you want to do, we want to invest in it. And I'm going, okay, well, that's nice to know. So probably from that lead, I'll distill a number of these interesting projects to me, and pick one that I really love and really think has upside and go with it. It's also, I think, part of it's luck and timing. Like the PC TV. We were way ahead of that, and now today, you know, this is a standard feature. I'm talking about the PC meets the living room. I mean, it still hasn't really been solved properly and adequately. Some of these problems take decades to unfold. What you're seeing here, I just will wrap up here. This is from our NOR project, Fusion of Technology, Art, Mathematics, Beauty, and Cultures. Okay, I have this in my book for over 30 years. I've loved the geometric patterns embodied in Middle Eastern architecture derived from analytical geometry. And I wanted to animate them and make them time variant and display them on giant wall-sized screens. So I started this project last year as a visiting fellow, and I showed this last summer to our dearly departed Dean, Rich Newton, who's actually been a personal friend of mine for over 30 years. He got real excited about this. He says, oh, I have someone you have to meet. He's going to be on campus in November. So come in October. I said, so come October 1st. I started pinging Rich. Hey, Rich, when's your friend coming? When do we set up a meeting? It took about 6 rounds of pings. Oh, he's not coming till then. Okay. Finally get the meeting set up, waiting 30 minutes. Rich comes in with his friend. For 3 minutes, get to show him a few of these tastes. And he says, how much do you want? How much do you need? I said, well, it's not how much. We need help. We need friends. We need collaborators. We need researchers. Oh, how much? Well, here, I had 2 budgets. This is the full budget, $5.55 million over 3 years. Here's the other budget, $50,000 for a little seed research. He said, here, I'll give you that. He practically wrote the check right there. So there was an opportunity, something I was interested in, didn't know where it was going to get funded. Though again, I have friends who go, we love what you do. You're at the university, it's a 501c3 tax-deductible charitable contribution. We'll send a few $100,000 your way if you want. And I said, well, thanks. That's nice to know. I'll consider that if I need it. And then now, you know, next thing you know, we're getting invited to go to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, where the gentleman, Sheikh Khalid Al-Ariza, who's also a Berkeley engineering alumnus, wants us to talk about putting one of these up on a wall in his building. So that's why I say it's kind of who you know, maintaining your networks. You're definitely plugged into one of the most happening places on the planet at UC Berkeley. So, you know, use your time here wisely and try to learn how to get by in about 5 or 6 hours of sleep most of the nights of the week, because that's what I'm doing now because I got so much going. And I can do that for about 3 or 4 days, and then comes Saturday night, so now I got to get a deep sleep. But this is our prototype, just tests of time-variant analytical geometry based on these Middle Eastern patterns. It's not just Islamic patterns, Turkish, Persian, Byzantine, Hebrew with the Kabbalah. These geometries are pervasive through all world cultures. And, you know, come on, there's a lot of tension right now between the Middle Eastern countries and the West. You know, you read about it every night in the news. So this was a concept also to try to build a bridge, find some more art, make something beautiful with technology that might hopefully lead to some understanding, a little bit of cultural friendliness to offset some of these unfortunate incidents. And it turns out that everybody we're showing to this is getting very excited. You know, people are wanting to write checks. I mean, it's like Web 2.0 or something, but it doesn't have anything to do with the web. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope you learned a few things. And you're in the hands of a very capable professor, and this is a terrific program that doesn't exist anywhere else, though we're talking to the dean of the Columbia School of Business, who's very interested in replicating what ICLOC has set up here. And as you know, Haas Business School and Columbia Business School already have a joint venture program, so we'll find out. In fact, it's almost time to call Glenn Hubbard and say, hey, Glenn, how about that letter we sent you? So that being said, if you want to come up and take a look at the poster or any of these other things, thank you very much.